complete the book, of course, it's natural to think, wow, I feel like I only understood half of it. Or I feel like I understood it in class, but then I forgot it afterwards. That's the point. The point is now the whole text is accessible to you. You're able to understand it yourself. You're able to revisit all of the chapters and know that I've already explained these problems and I can do that again. Make sense? So, our final lesson is that regarding number, singular, dual, and plural. Now, I've already introduced this topic to you on class number 1, and I explained to you how it is that sometimes in Arabic, there's different ways to make something plural. We've spoken about that as well. And we also learned in previous chapters that verbs can be made singular, dual, and plural already, right? Like kataba, what would the dual version of that be? Kataba. What would the plural be?
Katabu.
What would the plural of yaktubu be? Yaktubuna. Right? So we already been introduced to that through verbs. Now, what we're learning about is how to do it in nouns and the different types of plurals. Okay? So, for example, as the author says, you take the word mu'minun. And the word mu'minun in Arabic on its own refers to a single believer. All right, we add alif nun to the end like we do in verbs, and we get mu'minani. What does mu'minani mean? Two Muslims. Here's an interesting thing to know. Is mu'minani an ism?
Yeah.
It is. How do you know?
Because we know its root is mu'min.
Yeah. Like there's no sign of tanween here. Yeah. So you can say al-mu'minani.
Right.
But if I get rid of al, what am I left with? Mu'minani. It by default cannot take a tanween. Dual words cannot take tanween. Okay? So that's a new thing that we're learning about anything dual, is you'll never see mu'minanin.
Right.
Or any other version of tanween. Similarly, we also learned that, there's a way of pluralizing mu'minani from dual to plural, and that is by adding waw noon, like mu'minuna. Sometimes the way we pronounce mu'minani and mu'minuna will change as well. So how can we change the pronunciation? Well, first off, mu'minani, being a dual word, requires that you understand something very important. And that is, throughout the beginning of our studies in Arabic up until this point in time, the nasab state has been shown by fatha. The rafa'at state has been shown by, and the jar state has been shown by kasra. Now we're entering into the realm where that's not always true. Now when we're talking about dual words that are nouns typically end in noon kasra. Okay? That noon kasra is there by default. So if it's default, do you think it's the rafa, nasab, or jar state that this word is in? Once again, the kasra is there, the ani is there by default, okay, in Muslimani. Default is usually going to be which state in Arabic? The rafa'at state. The rafa'at state is usually the default state. Like if I want to say Muhammad, would I say Muhammadun then or that? Done, right? That's just by default because the mubtada or the subject of everything is in the rafa'at state. Now, by default, mu'minani is in the rafa'at state as a result of that. Y'all understand?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like so basically, just remember, if you see a dual noun, to look for the rafa'at state, we're not looking for a dhamma anymore. We're looking for an ani. Make sense?
Say that one more time.
When I'm looking at a dual noun in Arabic, by default, or rather, let me rephrase. When looking at a dual noun in Arabic, in order to find the rafa'at state, you no longer look for a dhamma at the end of the word.
Okay.
You look for an ani at the end of the word.
I mean, I'll take it as it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm starting to understand and just do that, I guess.
Okay. So is the problem that you're not understanding logically? Why are we looking at a
that's the
kasra?
problem.
Okay. So I'll explain that.
Okay.
Okay. The reasoning is that the noon kasra in Arabic at the end of a noun doesn't show you only the jar state. It's actually the kasra that can also show you the dual. Right? Like muslimani, yal'abani, even in verbs, right? The noon kasra shows you that it is dual. Okay? Now, if we messed with that, we changed that into a dhamma and said muslimanu, we wouldn't have the ni that tells us that this is dual.
Yeah.
So, the noon kasra does not tell you the state. What tells you the state is actually the alif. The alif before the noon kasra that tells you this is dual. Are you all following?
I'm following.
Okay, so just let me finish the story, and this will all begin to make sense. So, what we've started with is that not every word in the rafa'at state will end in dhamma. Not every word in the nasab state will end in fatha. Not every word in the jar state will end in kasra. Well, what's like the proof of that? Well, when we move from singular to duals in Arabic, like the word muslimani, which means two Muslims, when we move to duals, what's telling us that this word is dual?
The long vowel.
It's actually not the long vowel.
Alif noon.
It's the noon. It's the kasra at the end. Okay. The alif is there as part of the dual, but ani ultimately ends in what? Kasra. Okay. When we see ani, we assume that's the default. That's the rafa'at state. When I want to look for muslimani in the nasab or the jar state, what will happen is that the alif will transform into a ya.
Does rafa mean default?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
Yo, you're good. You're good. You're good. I just don't want to explain it to you.
I've already wired my head to think rafa dhamma, so now it's just like I'm trying.
Okay, let me explain. The rafa'at state is the default state in that, like, things will usually have a dhamma at their end because things will usually be the subject of a sentence, and the subject of a sentence is in the rafa'at state.
Okay.
So indirectly, you're right that rafa'at just kind of means default. Indirectly, that's true.
We're making an exception for dual states.
Yeah, but we're not making an exception for dual states. We're gonna make exceptions for a lot of things. Okay? Because there's a lot of different words whose haraka mean a different state than fatha being nasab, kasra being jar, dhamma being dhamma. And that's what I'm trying to introduce you to in a way that's very casual through dual. So when we're looking at dual, ani means rafa, aini means nasab or jar. And aini means nasab or jar. So instead of muslimani in the nasab or jar state would be muslimaini. What's changed between muslimani and muslimaini? The alif transformed into a ya. If it transforms into a ya, now it's in the nasab or jar state.
Okay. So instead of us being lazy, just looking at the last haraka, we can look at the last kind of two
letters. Yeah, the two letters. Ani would be rafa. Aini would be nasab or jar. You guys following so far? Like you're under. It may not logically make sense why they did that, but you're following the rule so far, right? Just pretend this is the rule I'm giving to you at the beginning of a game, and you're not allowed to try to question the game author about why the game is this way. They want you to figure out why it's this way. You'll find out when you play, right? So we have ani, aini. Similarly, the word muslimuna, is that singular, dual, or plural? That's plural. What's showing you that it's plural? The una, right? Now, una seemingly ends in which haraka? Fatha. Except the noon fatha is not telling you that this is in the nasab state. The nun fatha here is just telling you that this is a plural word. Okay? If you want to change the state of this word, you don't change its last haraka. Just like in Muslimani, if we wanted to change the state of the word, how did we change it?
Yeah.
We changed the alif. Did we change the last letter?
No.
No.
We changed the harak on the last letter.
Did I? Muslimani,
No, it's the same harak, I'm
Muslimaini,
sorry.
it's the same haraka. Similarly, Muslimuna, I want to change its state. I'm not going to change the nun. I'm going to turn the waw into a ya. So Muslimuna would become Muslimina. Does that make sense?
And Muslimina is for nasab and ja?
It's for nasab and ja.
That's good. That's one last thing.
Yeah, it's one
Yeah.
less thing to worry about. But now you have to figure out which of
Which
those
one is
states it's
gonna
in.
be? Yeah.
Oh.
So-
you can, Jari, you can talk.
So we did Muslimani to Muslimaini.
No, we did Muslimaini
And
to
then the second one
Muslimani.
we did Wait,
Muna.
It's the like. Can you say that again?
I think you said it right, yeah.
Muslimani to Muslimaini.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then the second one is Muslimuna to Muslimin.
Yes.
Good. Perfect.
Yes. Yes. That's correct.
Yeah.
I know, but
they
it's-
look very similar, but like Muslimaini and Muslimina.
Yeah, the letters look
Okay.
the same, but the harakas are
We just
different.
went from
Me.
Fetha to
Yeah.
Kasra.
Okay. We all understand so far? Okay. When you see a word like Muslimuna, it also cannot take tanween
Right.
Why?
because it's pluralized with una. So we can't.
Okay, I see. There's no way to put tanween on a
You
nun
can't.
already.
You can't. We can't. But then, it's not just the fact that it's a noon. A noon can actually have tanween, like mu'minun, like the singular. Mu'minun. What's the last letter of mu'min?
No.
And what's on top of it?
Tanween.
Yeah, so we can have tanween on noon. It's just because the fact that
Plural.
una symbolizes plurality. So we're not going to say unun. We're not going to change that. So in reality, what we're learning now is that dual and plural words that end in ani or ani or una or ina,
Oh.
dual and plural words that end in any of those suffixes can never have tanween.
Okay.
We can't say muslimanin, it's muslimani. We can't say muslimainin, it's always muslimaini. We can't say muslimunun, it's always muslimuna. And we can't say musliminun, it's always muslimina. Okay? Let's jump downwards to table 10.1. 10.1 is just indicating to you, like, if you look at the left column in 10.1, you should see Musliman at the top, right?
Yeah.
That's normally in which state?
I'm sorry, nasab.
What? Man.
Muslimun.
Man.
Musliman
Nasab.
Nasab. You see them on column, on the left column,
middle,
on page 67.
middle all the way to the left.
Or not 67, table 10.1, wherever that is in your book.
On page, oh, there we go.
Must be. Let me use the book here.
No.
Page 68.
68. It's on 68.
Can you say the word again?
Musliman.
Musliman. Yes, I see it.
That's in the
Nasab.
nasab state.
Then we put
Now, on the right of that, they would show you how the dual word will look in the nasab state. What is it?
Muslimaini.
Again, the alif was transformed into a
Yeah.
yeah. And on the right of that, they'll show you what plural words look like in the nasab state. Muslimina. What's transformed?
Wow. Yeah.
The waw turned into a ya in the nasab state. Make sense? All right, let's look at line number 2. We have Muslimin. What state is that in?
Jar state.
The jar state. Now, the dual version in the jar state looks like what?
Muslimaini.
So it looks exactly like the
Nasab.
nasab state. And the plural version in the jar state is Muslimina, which looks just like the nasab state for plural as well. And if we look at the raf'at state on line number 3, Muslimun, what is the dual in the raf'at state?
Musliman.
Muslimani. What is the plural in the raf'at state?
Muslimuna.
Muslimuna. You all understand how the chart is explaining what I just explained to you all?
Yes.
All right. So he actually is going to give us 6 examples of singular, or rather dual and plural, in various states. I want you all to try to figure out what state are all of these respective words in. So that's going to be on page number 67, 68, and perhaps in your books on page 69, right, Muhammad?
68.
It's on 68. Number is 1 to 6?
Yeah, 2 men went to the market?
Yes. Okay. So 2 men went to the market. Just for a second, zoom out, think of the English sentence, and try to understand what state would each of these respective words be in. Now, 2 men in Arabic is a single word.
Right.
What state would that word be in?
Because they went, it would be in the Rafa.
The Rafa'at state. Why?
Because they went.
It popped in your head intuitively. MashaAllah. This is the best answer to give to a teacher. Like, I just inherently know. You know? I'm an expert on the field.
They went.
I touch gold, then I just know it's real.
I don't know.
You know the muhaddithin Muhammad of the highest caliber? Like the muhaddith Imam Bukhari and the legacies of his like? You know, they would touch a hadith and they'd just be like, it's not authentic. And when asked why, they would say, I don't know. They just knew. Like, they were so attuned with the words of the Prophet ﷺ that if they weren't his words, they would just know. That's not the process on
They
his
know the
words.
feel of it.
They just feel it.
Yeah.
So similar to how Muhammad feels the states. So the Rafa'at state. Why though? Why is that what came into mind?
They're the doers of the action.
Because they're the doers, and another answer is because they're the subject,
Yes.
right? Of this sentence. You would assume they should be in the Rafa'at state because the subject of a sentence is primarily, or like by default, in the Rafa'at state. So went is obviously what type of word?
Verb.
Past tense verb. Okay, fair. And then to the market, what state would that be in?
To the
Jar.
market would be
Jar. Why?
To the market.
Because to is a harf jar, right? Ila. All right, so let's look at the Arabic real quick. What does it say?
ذهب رجلان إلى السوق.
What does that mean?
2 men
Yeah, 2 men.
went to the market.
Now, here's what's interesting, and this is one of like the many twists and turns of Arabic.
It's the verb.
Exceptionalism.
It's for single.
Yes,
Yeah.
Amir. So you're looking at the verb, which is dhahaba,
Yeah.
and it seems to mean what?
Third
One
person
man
singular.
went.
Third person singular male.
Singular male.
Yeah.
But we're saying how many
2
went.
men.
Well, what type of sentence is this? Is this a jumla ismiya or a jumla fi'liya?
فعليا.
You guys remember that distinction we made?
Because the first word is a
Is a verb.
verb.
Hamad, you following?
No.
Then tell me.
So jumla فعلية means
Remember, a jumla fi'liya is a verb starting sentence.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Is this a
yes.
jumla ismiya or fi'liya?
This is a فعلية.
How do you know? Because the first word is dhahaba.
Perfect.
Now, when we have a jumla fi'liya, then our verb only has to match the doer in its gender, not in its number.
Because it comes first.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Verb
sense.
has to match.
The doer. What's the doer here?
Two
The
men.
two or the 2 men.
Yes.
Oh, it's male.
Yeah. So your verb is only going to be masculine. Your verb doesn't have to be dual or plural. In fact, it has to be masculine and singular.
Oh, okay.
It
Oh,
has
okay,
to
it
be
has to be
singular.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm.
Just, I'm sure you have a good question. Let me just summarize this real quick. We studied all these verb charts like fa'ala, fa'ala,
Yeah.
fa'alu, yaf'alu,
يفعلي.
yaf'ali.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yaf'alu, yaf'alani, yaf'aluna, right? Those verb charts all included dual and plural.
Yes, yeah.
We only use dual and plural verbs if
Jumla
it's a
ismiya.
jumla ismiya.
So that's why it's
If
most common to be fatty.
The person, yeah. If the person is being mentioned before the action, like in a jumla ismiya, the subject is a noun, right? If the person is mentioned before the action, then the action is going to correspond in number to the subject. But if the action is mentioned before the person doing it, i.e., if it's a jumla fi'liya, then the verb will always remain singular, but its gender will match the actual doer. In short, let me explain that in simpler.
So
What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying if you're doubtful about the verb forms, just use the
Jumla fi'liya always. And you'll always have singular, right?
Yeah.
That's if you're the author, and everyone will know you just didn't know what you were writing. So
Or like you're
that's why he's
memorized it.
speaking so bland.
So,
I'm just
so
joking.
So this,
Yes.
the example used is jumla fi'liya
Yes.
because you're starting with it. So how would we say it if it's
A jumla ismiya.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just really just swap the order.
So let's just try it.
But so you would do rajulani, and then you would give the dual form the haba.
Yeah. Yeah, the haba. Not the haba.
Oh, yeah.
The
The
haba.
alif comes up then. Yeah.
Yes. Now, in short, as you've mentioned, if the subject's mentioned first, then the verb becomes dual and plural. If the verb is mentioned first, the verb is actually always going to remain singular. Okay?
But the meaning is exactly the same.
Yes. The meaning is the same in that it conveys the same info, but the emphasis has changed.
Okay.
Right? Depending on what comes first. Either you're emphasizing the individual who's doing the action, or you're emphasizing the action they did itself. Okay? So, let's kind of recap. In the Quran, we'll see this a lot of times. وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. يَقُولُ, is that singular or dual or plural? يَقُولُ, like يَفْعَلُ. It should be singular.
Yeah.
What would the plural version of that be? يَقُولُونَ, right? But the Quran says, وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا are the disbelievers. Disbelievers. But the verb that's being used for the disbelievers is singular. Why is that?
Because it's jumla fi'liya.
Because it's a jumla fi'liya. Make sense? وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ. وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ. نِسْوَةٌ is the plural of imra'atun.
Okay.
What's imra'atun?
Woman.
So what is niswatun?
Women.
Women. Okay? The Quran says وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ. Qala singular. And it's masculine. But that's a different story for later. We'll also be able to flip genders on verbs sometimes. Okay? Yeah.
So I'm still having a little trouble understanding why it's important for me to be able to identify rajulani as being in the rafa state.
Because if you thought that was in the nasab or jar state, the sentence wouldn't make sense, right?
Well, I mean,
if you saw dhahaba rajulani ila al-masjidi or ila suqi, and you saw rajulani has a kasra on the end, you'd be like,
who went to the men?
Well, who's the one that actually went? You wouldn't know that they're the ones who went. Does that make sense? Remember, the doer is supposed to be in what state? The rafa'at state.
yeah.
But the rafa'at state for a dual noun is an.
Yeah.
It's shown not with a dhamma, it's shown with alif nun.
Okay.
And the nasab and jar state is shown with ya nun. Muslimaini. Does that make sense? So now we're not looking for states merely based off harakas.
Yeah.
The qualifications for a state change can now be the change of letters too. So states are not just changes of haraka, states are changes of letters now. So the alif transforming into a ya is what indicates the state has changed, not the fatha, dhamma, or kasra.
So what would be an example of like a similar sentence but using rajulun in the nasab state?
Use like the
Okay,
shart,
for
because you need to
example,
know which
I
one.
can say Zaydun daraba rajulayni fi suqi.
So who?
Zaydun daraba rajulayni. Now rajulayni is not pronounced rajulani now because it's in the nasab state. And that's what these six examples are showing exactly your question.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like that's why they're provided. Any questions before we continue? Okay. Let's look at the scholars gave a speech in the mosque. Before you even look at the Arabic, tell me what the states these words would be in.
The scholars that gave it would be in the Rafah state.
The scholars would be in the Rafat state. And what about gave?
Is the fair?
Gave a speech is a verb. Okay.
Right.
It's not gave is the ferret, and then a speech is the object, because in Arabic we have one word that means
For
gave a
speech.
speech.
Okay.
Yeah,
Khataba, yeah.
khataba, like
That's why
khutbah,
it's
right?
called khutbah,
Yeah. So
And that's
khataba in Arabic is, correspondent to the English gave a speech, so there's no object here. And then in the mosque would be in which state?
Jar.
The jar state. So let's look what they've written here. Let's read it.
خطب العالمون في المسجد.
خطب العالمون في المسجد. What's the word for gave a speech here?
خطب.
So is this the jumla ismiya or fi'liya?
فعلية.
Which means our verb's going to remain
In the third person
singular
masculine.
masculine. Very good. Now look at the doer of the sentence. Where is it?
Alimuna.
Al-alimuna. What state is that word in?
Wow, noon, so this must be the rafa state.
The rafa'at state. As we've just learned, una means rafa'at state. Now we're not looking for a fatha dhamma or kasra. We're looking for a wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In plurals, we're looking for a wow. And in the nasab state, what would you be looking for? Yeah, so you would be looking for
العالمين.
alimina. Okay? Not alamin, that's Surah Fatiha. That's a different word. Sometimes people say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. That's how they translate it. Like when asked to translate Alameen, they say the people who know. Alameen is plural, alam, which means world. Okay? So, خطب العالمون رفعت state في المسجد jar state, just like you predicted. Now, how would I say Yusuf helped the scholars in the masjid? How would I say that?
Nasara Yusufu.
Nasara Yusufu.
Al-Alimina.
Nasara Yusufu al-alimina. Very good. في المسجد. Make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at our next one. Nasr helped two oppressed persons. What state would these words be in? Nasr would be in the Rafat state, and
Oppressors would be in the.
two oppressed persons would be in the Nasab state. Why?
Because they're the ones getting hit.
They're the object. Getting helped. Getting help.
It says hit.
No,
I think it
no.
says hit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nasir hit the oppressor.
Okay.
Is this help on yours?
Oh, he hit the oppressors. We have that as number 4. Just look at
Oh, I'm
your
sorry.
next
I
one.
went down one. My eyes just. Okay, yeah.
That's Nasir. You're looking at the wrong one.
Which one are we doing?
Going
Number
to the
3.
one before that.
Khalid.
Khalid.
Yeah.
Khalid helped two oppressed persons?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Nasara, I thought it was Nasir.
Okay. So, Nasir helped two oppressed persons. Two oppressed persons are going to be in the Nasab state. What's the sentence say in Arabic? Nasara, Nasirun. You guys don't have this, do you?
No, we have
The
Khalid.
name, the noun is different for ours.
I got you. So, Khalidun, Nasara, or Nasara, Khalidun. What's the last word?
Madlumina.
Al-Madlumina?
Meani.
Maini.
May. I'm sorry. My Arabic sucks.
Maini. Okay? So when we're talking about two, remember Mani and Maini. Ani and Aini are the ways of making it Rafa and Nasab states and Jar states
So then
respectively.
Rajulayni.
Would be
But why does it Dhahaba Rajulani?
because they're the doers. So that's
Oh,
the
yeah,
Rafa
yeah,
state,
yeah.
right? So Madlumaini is in the Nasab state here. Let's look at number 4 for us is Nasir hit the oppressors.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we read it in Arabic? Daraba Nasiru? No, not Nasiru.
Nasirun.
Run.
Nasirun.
How do we connect that to the law?
Nasirun.
Huh? Nah, I told you no.
Right,
Yeah, Noon Kasra. So we have to say Nasiru Nil. Nasiru Nil. No, Nasiru Nil.
Oh, that's that special tajweed rule you taught us, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Tajweed rule. What do we call that? The Noon Qutni.
Noon Qutni.
The Noon Qutni, once again.
That's actually not Arabic,
What?
It's like Persian or something.
Yeah, and the Arabs are supposed to know this intuitively. That's why it's not in the Quran.
I mean, in general, it's just a guess roll. You give a guess roll.
Okay, so we have Nasir here. Nasir. Okay, what does the Ra have on top of it?
Tanween Dhamma.
Okay, what's the next letter?
Alif, lam.
No, but this is Hamzatul,
Wasl.
so we can't read it. This is Lam Shamsiyah,
Dad.
so we can't read it.
Dad.
We have Dha with Shadda. Here's the problem.
So when you pronounce it, becomes.
When we read this, that means you're skipping the tanween.
Yes, you would. Yeah.
If we said Nasirul Dhalimina. Okay, so now, huh?
You're not really skipping the lean. You're just, I think in general, it's just easier to say when you have two sukuns, in general, you just add a kasra.
Where's the two sukuns?
So the tanween is basically noon. It ends in a noon.
Good. So this tanween, if we want to rewrite the tanween, then all we have to do is change our notation. You know how in math you can change your notation?
Right.
The way you write something?
Yeah.
In Arabic, we have notation for tanween like this, right?
Yes.
Don't they say the same thing?
Yeah, it sounds the same. Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
A tanween, you understand what the word tanween means? Tanween means adding a noon. Tanween, noon.
That's what they call it.
Noon is in the word
That's what they call it,
tanween.
Notification.
Yeah, it's called noonification. That's actually the definition of tanween, is noonification. Tanween means adding a noon.
Yeah.
Okay? So nasirun with dhammatain or nasirun with noon like this are the
Same thing.
yeah, there we don't write it like this because our notation doesn't allow us to write an extra noon. We merely pronounce an extra noon.
Yes.
Okay? Now, if you look at the sentence like this, now you can understand. We have a sukoon here.
Oh, so you just change it to a kasra.
Yes, we have a sukoon here. We have a sukoon here
Right.
because any shadda in reality is a sukoon
Before the actual, yeah.
before the actual haraka, right? So we have sukoon plus sukoon, which is impossible to pronounce. So what do the Arabs do? They give this one a kasra.
Oh.
So how do we pronounce it?
No.
Nasiru dhalimaini, right?
Yeah.
No, al-dhalimin is plural. It's plural. Is that dual or plural?
That is plural.
That's plural. And in what state is that in?
That's in the nasl.
The nasab state. Very good. How did you figure out it's in the nasab state? It's because it ends with the fatha, right?
That time means that it's plural.
No.
So the fatha is now telling me this is in the nasab state.
No.
No.
It's
What
the-
is?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
It's the ya.
Yeah.
Because this word always has fatha. Muslimuna also has fatha. Is it in the nasab state?
No.
It's not. We got to look at
But yeah,
the
it can
letter.
also denote the jar state as well.
Yes, it can. So the nasab and jar states have crossover in dual and plural nouns that
But you'll
end in
know
una.
because there's more rules for them. Not more rules, but you can tell.
You can tell what state it's in. If there's a harf jar before it, or if there's a mudaf before it, you'd know.
Yeah.
Okay? I wrote with the two pens, what should be in what state?
2 pins, I would assume, be in the jar because with.
There we go, that's it.
Okay.
And I wrote is one word in Arabic, right? So how do we say it? Not aktubu.
Oh, no. Yeah, katabu.
Katab.
Katabtu.
Yes.
It's one person wrote, not.
It's I. It's I. First person.
Yeah, you're right.
Katabtu bil qalam bil qalamaini. What does that mean? I wrote the two pens. What word is in what state? Is al qalamaini in the jar state?
Yes.
How do you know?
Because
The
it's on.
Harf jar.
Oh, with. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, how do you know it's in the jar state the way they've
Yeah.
written in
Yeah,
Arabic?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the ya.
Yeah.
The ya is showing you. Because otherwise in the rafa state qalamaini would be qalaman. Yes?
If it's many pens, it would be.
Aqlam. Okay, I haven't begun. Right now we've learned how to add una to the ends of words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 99.98% of cases.
That's enough. The una.
The una is only added to human beings.
Oh, really? So una is just a one-time thing.
Yeah, it's only added to human beings. So there are a very few amount of exceptions to that, but you're never gonna say qadamuna.
Yeah.
Yes, you're not gonna say phonuna. You know, telephonuna. You won't say
Is
it.
it afwal? What is it?
The phone.
There's 44 patterns that could actually land on to be a plural word. Plural words can be on one of 44 plus patterns. Yes. Yes. You want to know them? We have to memorize a poem on that. Yes, of course I haven't memorized it.
No, there's more than 40. There's a lot of different patterns they can fall on. You'll just catch a hang of the patterns the more you read. Okay. In reality, you've done the same in English. You just don't know you've done it.
Yeah, children.
Yeah, you just don't know what you've done. Let's look at the last one. A man came from amongst the believers. Which word would be in which state? Man would be Rafat state. Came is a verb. From amongst is a harf jar, and the believers would be in the nasab state.
Yeah. Oh no, harf jar. So yeah.
It would be in the jar state.
Sorry.
It would be in the jar state. So how do we say it in Arabic?
Came first, right?
Ja'a rajulun min al-mu'minina. Al-mu'minina, is that in the jar state?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is. Otherwise, it would be what? Mu'minina, is that dual or plural?
That's plural.
Yes. So what's the Rafa version of this? Mu'minuna, not mu'minani. Mu'minani is, and the Rafa and the Nasab and Jar version of that is not mu'minina, it's mu'minaini.
So if it's in the object, what is it again?
Nasab.
What is it?
Dual or plural?
Plural.
Al-mu'minina, which is the same as this, because the jar and the nasab state look the same in una endings. Okay. Any questions? Are you confused yet?
They added amongst.
No, okay, it's starting to make sense. But we have to have.
But you're not following the logic.
No, I'm following the logic.
Okay.
We need to do more.
Yeah.
Used to it.
Yeah, you'll get used to patterns as a whole. There are logical patterns. Basically, we call them qiyasi. That means plurals and patterns that follow some type of rational rule. And I've told you a rational rule. If you want to pluralize humans, you just add una. And then there are rational rules in non-humans as well that we'll eventually learn. And then there's exceptions, which are just things you learn by learning.
Yeah.
Don't let it overwhelm you. Let's look ahead. Let's go ahead and look at our word list real quick. The word yur, okay? This is one of the weird exceptions where una is added to the end of a noun in order to pluralize it. Now, that noun in question is not a human being. Because what does sanatun mean?
Years.
Year. Sanatun means year. Is that a human being?
That's time.
No, it's a time period. So therefore, as I told Brother Mushtaq, the una ending is normally only added to the end of what type of nouns? People. But in spite of that, the plural of sanatun is sinuna. And the plural of sin, or the nasab state is sinina.
I've heard that. I've heard singing.
Sinin, right? You've met year. We're on the word
Oh,
list.
year. Oh,
Yeah. Do you see the word list?
Next page.
So we have year, and the plural in spite of that is sinuna.
But there's two options for the plural, right?
There's two what?
Options for the plural.
Well, the awam is not the plural of sanatun. It's the plural of am.
I see.
Okay, am means year as well, and the plural of am is awam. That is a new vocabulary word that we've learned about today. Let's go ahead and look at the second. Why are plurals not
So
mentioned?
yeah, why is that? Like for fish and no.
Akhwal, I don't know.
Oh, here it is. Sorry.
I don't think the lesson expectation is that you should.
For example, Uncle Khalu.
Yes.
The plural of that.
Akhwal. Yeah, akhwal. It's not khaluna.
Because it's people.
Yeah, no, that's not one.
Yeah.
So there are words that have rational and irrational plurals both.
Exceptions.
No, they have both at the same time. You can pick. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Whichever one you fancy.
just understand that it seems confusing, but here's why it's confusing. It's because you studied English with zero logic, then you came to a language that has a lot of logic, and then when that language defies from its logic, you think it's illogical. No. That the problem is not that the language is illogical, it's because you've never used your logic before.
to try and speed up the language acquisition.
You're the problem.
No, I'm not saying you. It's just our exposure to different languages is what holds us back. Okay. Our third word, our second line says fish. What's the word for fish here? Samakun. Samakun means fish, like the genus, the species. A singular fish is samakatun. Okay. We have waylun. That's in the Quran. It means woe.
What?
Waylun means woe, which means curse.
Oh, W-O-E.
Yes.
Whoa, wait.
Are you looking at the vocab list?
Their vocab
I don't
is a
see
different
it
order.
online.
It's a different order, I think.
You have a different order. My bad. Okay.
That's fine.
So waylun, if you look in the parentheses, it's used with the word laka. Now that basically means that if you want to curse someone, you don't say waylun zaydun. You say waylun li zayd. You see how they use li? Waylun laka, for example, means woe unto you. How would I say woe unto him? Waylun lahu. How would I say woe to her? How would I say woe to Yusuf? Yeah, so humaza, as we have in the Quran. Waylul lil mutaffifin. You understand how the li is used after wayl? That's all he's telling you, that when we see the word wayl, it's always used with the harf jar li. Make sense? Okay. They're just explaining how to use the word. Our next line is the word sariqun. What does sariqun mean? Thief. What's the plural? Sariquna. We're using this rational pluralization method. Our next one is neglectful. What is it? Sahin. Okay. I won't explain why it ends in kasra right now. But the plural is sahuna, are people that are neglectful. We also have a word which is a type of sajda we do after our salah when we mess up in our salah and are neglectful. It's called sajdatus sahu, right? Which means neglect. So a neglectful person is sahin, and neglectful people are sahuna. Our next line says successful. What's the word for successful? And what's the plural? Exactly. These are all examples of plural una words in the Quran. In our Islamic tradition, very common in the Quran as well. We have the word he prepared, a'adda, that's in the Quran. We have the word jail. What is it? Sijin. What's the plural of sijin? Sujun. So there is an una at the end of this non-human word. This non-human plural ends in una. These are very rare, but they're just showing you examples of them in existence. Then we have yes.
I have a question. So we're using the same logic here with when we're talking about people to say that this is in the rafa state. Like for example,
Sujunun is different from the ones that we've learned thus far because those una words don't end in tanween.
Okay, so muflihuna, for
yes.
example,
So by the way,
uses
just
the same logic that this is a subject.
yes, it's in the rafa'at state. It's the same logic. Sujun. It's not similar to what we've learned right now. Yes. No. So
Okay, that's okay.
let me explain real briefly. Yeah. No. I'll explain in brief. Like, we can have words like kitabun, okay? If I were to ask you what pattern is kitabun on, you would replace the root letters with fa'in lam. What pattern is kitabun on? Not fa, kitabun, so it would be fi'alun. It's on the pattern of fi'alun. Okay? Okay? And now I can tell you, well, you know, the plural of kitab is on the pattern of fu'ulun. How would you pronounce it? Kutubun. Make sense? The singular was on what pattern? Fi'al. The plural was on what pattern? Fu'ul. Do you realize how the first letter even changed its harakah?
Yeah.
Do you realize that? They're all changing their harakas.
Similarly, sijn is on the pattern of fi'lun, right? Because sin has a kasra, jim has a sukoon, nun has a dhamma, on the pattern of fi'l. But its plural is on the pattern of fu'ul. So, the plural is sujun, not sijun. So, in some, like in non-rational plurals, all of the harakas of all the letters can change. But in the plural that we just learned, which was adding una to the end of a word, in that situation, all of the letters retain their original harakas. Like muslimuna, the mim has the dhamma just like muslim. The sin has a sukoon just like muslim. The lam has a kasra in muslimuna just like the lam has a kasra in muslimun. All of the letters retain their original harakat in the pluralization method of adding una to the end. Does that make sense? But this isn't that method for sujun. That's not the method that's being employed. Make sense? Okay, I hope that spiel makes some sense, because that will prove very valuable as we continue learning about plurals as we go onwards. Let's go ahead and look at master or chief. What is the word in Arabic? Sayyid. A sayyid is a leader, a master. The plural of sayyidun is what? Sadatun. Sadatun. It ends in ta, but that ta is not used to denote femininity. Sometimes ta can exist in masculine words. For example, Hamza. Hamza ends in ta marbuta. Hamzatu. Hamzatu Asadullah. You might have heard in a khutbah. Hamzatu. We have words like Usamatu.
Osama is with the Tamabuta?
We have Muawiyatu. We have Talhatu. So at that, we have Al-Allamatu. Allama is someone well learned. But it ends in that, not because this person's a female. You'll always see a male after Allama. Illa mashallah. Sometimes you see other genders. But anyhow, Sadatun ends in ta, and it's the plural of Sayyid. This is not a female. We're not talking about females here. Alright? Our next word is insulting, which is what? Muhinun. That's in the Quran very commonly. Flows is tajri, tahta is below. Tawabun. What is tawabun? Repentful, right? The one who makes repentance. So the repentant, the one doing the repentance. The wabun is also someone who accepts the repentance. Okay? So tawabin, we say inna Allah yuhibbul tawabin. When do we say that? After our wudu. The dua after wudu is what? Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawabin. Yeah. So in the Quran we have inna Allah yuhibbul tawabina. Allah loves those who make tawbah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, subhanallah, calls himself Tawwab. Where does he call himself Tawwab? Where? In Allah Tawwabun.
That's not the same word you said.
No, Tawwab is the word I'm looking for, but that's not the ayah. It's in that section.
Oh, it's after
فَإِنَّهُ يَتُوبُ إِلَى اللَّهِ مَتَابًا. What does that mean? Is it complicated to explain? Yeah. Mataba means forgiveness, just like Tawbah. But Yatubu Mataba means that person has seriously applied themselves to Tawbah in the way that it deserves. That's what Mataba in that context means. That's a complicated type of maf'ul called the maf'ul mutlaq. Okay? Yeah, so we have 5 maf'uls to study. We've only studied 1.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Alright, so we have, let's go ahead and I'm just going to point out some notable words in this word list. We have wa'idun, which means preacher. Its plural is the type of plural we've been learning, like wa'iduna. Okay, we have shajaratun, and as you can see, it has 2 plurals, shajaratun, and what's the other one?
Ashjarun. Okay. So I'm just gonna add something to this lesson 10 that the author didn't add, which is right now we've learned how to make duals in plurals for some types of words, and the way that we made a dual word was by what? Adding what? Adding to the ending if we want it to be in which state, and adding what to the end of a word? Dual word. Aini if we want it to be in the nasab or jar state. We've learned that. We also learned that for humans, if we want to pluralize humans, what can we put at the end of a word? Una. This sometimes works, and it doesn't work for all words. Okay, but it is a very common usage of plurals. We call these sound plurals. I'll explain that later why we call them that. But the una is added when we want the noun to be in which state? The rafa'at state. And what do we add if we instead want it to be in the nasab or jar state? Ina. Okay, we've learned that. One final thing is how it is that we are going to pluralize human beings that are female. Okay, so females. Because we learn how to pluralize males by adding what? Una, ina, and ina. Okay? Now we have to learn how to pluralize females. Like for example, as a base starting word, we can take the word muslimatun. Okay? Muslimatun, which means one female Muslim. If I want to make that dual, what would I say? Muslima Tani. Muslima Tani. What have I added to the end? Ani, just like before. If I wanted in the nasab or jar state, I would say Muslima Taini. I would say Muslima Taini. So the dual rules for females are the same. The plural rules, this is where things change.
Okay.
We don't add una to the end of a female word. I can't say Muslimatuna to say Muslim women.
Okay.
Instead, what I do is I remove the ta marbuta. Remove the ta marbuta from Muslimatun. What do you get? Muslima. Then I add alif, and I add a normal ta.
Muslimat.
Muslimat.
Okay.
Now, here's what's different from the una that we learn about males. The una in males never ends in tanween. Can I say Muslimunun?
No.
What will it always be? Muslimuna, or it can be Muslimina,
Yeah.
right? The noon's the same.
Yeah.
For the plural for female, we added what to the end of the word?
Muslimat. So we added the ta.
Alif and
Ta.
ta, regular ta.
Yeah.
Okay? That regular ta has tanween.
Has tanween. Does the tanween indicate nasab and jar?
You're smart, mashallah. The tanween does not indicate,
State.
it does, but not in the same way as a normal noun.
Oh, really?
Okay, so let's write Muslimatun out.
Muslimat.
Let's write that word, Muslimatun. You guys need me to write it, or can you write it?
I can't write my name.
Okay, Muslimatun. It has what on top of it?
Tanween. Thumb.
Dhamma, which you would think is what state?
Rafa.
And you're correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Muslimatun is in the rafa'at state. Okay? Everyone alive? You guys here? Okay. Now let's change the two dhammas into two kasras. How would I pronounce it?
Muslimatin.
Muslimatin. Seems to be in what state?
Jar.
And you've been correct.
Oh,
Except here's where it gets interesting. Muslimatin is also in the nasab state.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. There's not 10. I don't know. I don't like that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right? So, Muslimat, any plural female word, okay, when given two dhammas, like Muslimatun, indicates the rafa'at state. You following me, right? Don't take notes on basic stuff. Muslimatun, two dhammas, seems to be in the rafa'at state. That's correct. Muslimatin seems to be in the jar state. It is in the jar state. However, if you want to put it in the nasab state, you're still gonna end it with kasras. Muslimatin.
So how would I say I helped Muslim women? Nasartu Muslimatin. Why?
Because
That is
nasab.
the nasab state.
That is the nasab state. So do you realize from day one why when I told you Rafa equals Dhamma? Just kidding. Not for long. So I have two ways of teaching you. Either I could teach you all of this nuance on day one, or I can lie to you in layers of like descending lies. In descending in their like occurrence. So the nasab state normally it's shown by fatha. Sometimes it's shown by ya, like in which word? Muslimaini. Sometimes it's shown by ya, like in what other word? Muslimina. And the nasab state now is sometimes shown with kasras in plural female words. You all following?
Yeah.
This is going over your head? Now, the simple thing is to understand that as we learn more and more and more and more types of words, we're also going to learn more and more ways to express Rafa and Nasab and Jar in different ways.
Other unique for each person.
Yes, unique for each class of words. So, this class of words is called rational female plurals. Rational female plurals end in atun. That atun can only morph into atin. It can never morph into tan. Okay? That is the logical rule for the class of words that are rational female words. Then there are logical rules for the class of words that are rational male plurals. Then there's logical rules for the class of words that are dual. Then we'll learn about, more sub variants of different words and different types with their own rules. So don't feel overwhelmed. Just know that this arsenal is always going to get bigger. The list in your head of how to identify, first off, what type of word is this? This class of word takes the nasab and jar state how? Okay? And based off of that, can I conclude that this is the state or can I conclude that this is the state? Make sense? This is very crucial to understand because number one, when you're reciting the Quran, Faris Masri, when you have a little bit of knowledge, it's dangerous. You have a little bit of knowledge of Arabic is dangerous unless you have an exploratory, curious mind that realizes, there's always something more of the depth of the language that I've yet to learn. And I can tell you that with confidence. You can study Arabic for 15 years, full time, and you will still spend a lifehood reading one dictionary of the language that exists as like the king of all dictionaries. Okay, there's two. There's Lisan al-Arab and there's Taj al-Uruz. I'm talking 40 volumes.
Yeah, we have the largest word.
Okay,
Word bank.
but it's not even a new work. This was handwritten back in the day. And every single dictionary entry has pages and pages of uses of those words over centuries. And the earliest usage of the word according to poetry. Just to prove that it means what he claims it means. So, there's depth. You have to realize a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, but it is very beneficial whenever you decide from that moment onwards that I will not stop learning knowledge. This isn't an advertisement to retain job security. This is for you to be able to go anywhere in the world and realize now you started this is not going to get any better. But that's part of the good. That's part of the good, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers searching knowledge to be of the status that He considers it at, where the inanimate objects and animals in the sea making dua for you is not like an honor that's earned like easily. People spent hundreds of years studying. I didn't imagine the time of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, were they asked to give up seeking knowledge because of the depth of their lives? No. People spend their whole existence doing this. And those are the people who are nameless, who you don't even know them,
And on their shoulders, on the day of judgment, is like this whole ummah staying afloat with enough knowledge because of some people who you don't even know existed. They lived in a hut, they lived a modest life, and honestly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took them in whatever condition He took them. Sometimes they were beat to death. Sometimes, they didn't have a very beautiful voice. Sometimes they didn't have a beautiful complexion. Sometimes they were made fun of, right? Imam A'mash, if you know about him, then you realize that he was one of the bedrocks of the madhahib today. Imam A'mash is from the Tabi'een, a very interesting person in the time of Imam Malik and others, is that one day he saw his daughter just staring at him, real weird, just like prolonged stare. And he said, "What's the matter with you? Why are you looking at me like that? Why are you staring at me like that?" And she says something, okay? So Imam Amash was laughing so hard that the people thought he would die. Like he almost died laughing. He was in this insane state of like just humor, to where he looks at his students, they're all looking at him like, "What's wrong?" And he said, "What's the matter? You're not going to ask me why I'm laughing like this?" And they said, "Tell us, what's so funny?" He said, "Today my daughter was staring at me like this. So eventually I said, 'What's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like this?' And she said to him that, 'I'm just trying to figure out what it is about you my mother would fall in love with.'" Okay? He's the bedrock of our ilm, but he was known for his ugliness. And his mother, or his wife, well, obviously not.
Yeah.
So the daughter was just so confused. She didn't realize that ilm is such a lofty goal, that the whole world would die to be with Imam Ahmad. She married him for his knowledge, right? That's what beautified him. But these are people that oftentimes we don't understand the level of sacrifice. You could spend your whole life studying just their biographies and understanding their zeal and passion for knowledge. Like, they were not playing games. A single word meant, I'm willing to give up the resources that Allah has blessed me with over my life to go learn something new about this deen. You think they had job security? A lot of them were not paid by the government. A lot of them were self-sufficient. Some of them were wealthy. Some of them, they lived on low means. Some of them, they didn't even have time to bake bread. So what they would do is they would just eat roasted flour from our teachers and their teachers. They would eat roasted, like actual dough, like not dough, flour, right? And they would put it in water and drink it. That's actually one of the drinks of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was called as-sawiq. Yeah, so straight, just drink the roasted flour with water and dates in the water. That was their meals. That's how they learned knowledge so efficiently that they didn't. When you have such a lean way of life, you're like, what we think of as camping is luxury to them. These wilderness survivalists. That's just life. That's every day. It's not you doing a trek. That's how they lived. They lived day to day, hour by hour, to study knowledge. So the reality is that as we begin to learn more and more things, just be ready and prepared, like mentally, to understand that my whole understanding may just be but a figment of what there is yet to learn. In the Quran, Faris asked me a question the other day, which was, why is the state of this word not the state that it seems like it should be in? And this was actually one of the objections that was raised heavily by the Orientalists in order to prove that the Quran is indeed not the word of God. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being al-Hakim, cannot make grammatical mistakes. And the whole, discussion is like backwards on its head. In reality, you have to ask yourselves, where is it that this grammar came into being from? When is it that we can look at a language and say, this is what's correct, this is what's incorrect?
And what role did the Quran have on the development and formalization of grammar? Or was it that the poetry had an impact on the grammar that the Quran was copying? We know the Quran didn't resemble the speech of the poets. So in reality, the ayah he mentioned, the question was, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَصَابِئُونَ. Una indicates what state? The Rafa'at state, not the Nasab state. The Rafa'at state, okay? And what's before it is inna. And remember, inna is a word that causes what to the subject? To the Nasab state. Now the answer to that question I can't explain unless you have a greater depth in grammar. But just understand that, even your understanding of Arabic, as it evolves, you'll begin to realize it's because of whatever weaknesses you have in your linguistic skills. That has to be something that you're not going to remedy, but you will continue to remedy for the rest of your life. You're not going to, be eloquent in a language whose, logical rule base is larger than, your library at home. Like the amount of content just on its legal rule, on its rational rules is that large. If you went into every science of Arabic, you're not going to master that. This is not English. It's not a morphing language that it just becomes right because somebody said it today. Like we have 2,000 dictionary entries annually, minimum in the Western world, and half of it is just internet gibberish, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the reality is that the Arabic language has that degree of depth, but historically for meaningful purposes. And just as we've learned that, atun, when talking about plural female, is indicative of a plural female word in the Rafa'at state, but atin is indicative of a plural female word in what state? Jar or Nasab state. We will come across word classes who they have no haraka changes, but they have state changes. You just won't be able to see any of the impact of the Rafa Nasab or Jar state on the word, but it is in a specific state. And lastly, to inspire you a little bit, you might be wondering, who in their right minds came up with this idea that they should even try to explain how the Arabs talk? Why don't people just hear them until it is that they start to pick it up? And the truth is that Arabic is such a complex language that you kind of have to be born into it. And I'm not saying you have to be born Arab. No. You have to be born into the high-bred speech of the Arabs in its Fusha variants in order to actually be able to intuitively learn how to speak Arabic. And we're past that. Nobody on earth speaks like that. The depth of literature that was on the tongues of common people in the past cannot even be explained by today's linguistics or today's academics. Their speech patterns. Look at Aisha radiallahu anha and her description of, the story that she told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about Zara and Abu Zara. Go look at the story. Look how she spoke. If you look at the Arabic, you'll be shocked. She married the Prophet when she was young. We don't have to debate what that age was today. But she was young, right? Was she born into an educated class where she went to school? No. She married the Prophet quite young. She was the daughter of Abu Bakr.
Yeah, she was around.
Radiallahu anhu. But if you look at how well spoken she was born into that role of noble speech. So it being such an exclusivist circle that bred individuals who could speak at the caliber that they did, the only way to deconstruct that speech retroactively later in life and reverse engineer it to understand it would be through the development of so many rules that can rationally be understood by people who weren't born into it. Who made those rules? One of the greatest grammarians, actually considered the greatest grammarian in all of Islamic tradition, is who?
Ali.
Now, Ali radiallahu anhu started it. Yeah, he started the efforts
to formalize Arabic grammar, like the states of the nasab and the jar and the rafa, it was Ali radiallahu anhu, because in his era, people were reading the Quran and understanding it wrong and giving the wrong harakas because they didn't understand the states. So he certainly saw that. But the one who actually formalized it in the largest stretched out way possible was a man named Sibawayh. Okay, Sibawayh. And Sibawayh, does that sound Arab to you? No, he was Persian.
All the great people.
Okay, so Sibawayh is actually the Arabs' way of saying his name. His name is actually Farsi, and it's Sibawayh. Sib in Urdu and Farsi means apple. Way means the one who sells them. Wala in Farsi is Wala, Sib Wala. You know, that was his name, Sibawayh. Now, he was an Arab, but he applied so much diligence in his understanding of the language that today the whole world, Muslim world, Arab, non-Arab, all depend on Sibawayh and his work. So these giants in our history, the difference between them and the difference between us is that they had a reason to be so in love with the Arabic language. They had a reason. No one else will apply themselves that diligently to a language unless they're getting paid really well, right? Unless they are being treated like royalty. But we know what happens when royal people try doing good things. They never come out good because they're not used to hard work. They're not used to, doing it out of passion. They know that if they can get by with the bare minimum effort, that they will, like anyone privileged and entitled. Illa mashallah. Some people who are rich and royal, they also have passions. For example, we have in the Indian tradition, I mentioned last time, was Aurangzeb. Yeah, Aurangzeb was the one who authored, he wasn't just a regular person, he was a scholar of Islam himself. He was the king of the Muslim dynasty in India. And he authored, in conjunction with many ulama that he paid, which was Alamgir. I'm so sorry. Aurangzeb was a conqueror. I meant Alamgir. I meant Alamgir, who was also one of the rulers of India. And Alamgir, along with many other scholars, they authored a glorious work on Islamic fiqh, right? Yeah, or also called Fatawa Hindiya. Because they wanted a fiqh manual that wasn't just for the average Muslim, but it was for an empire. Right? They wanted fiqh that could be applied at a mass scale for hundreds of millions of people of different backgrounds, but a legal system that could be conformative to Islam and also rule. So they went.
He was a ruler as well.
Yeah, he was. Alamgir, yeah, he was.
Alamgir is the title for Aurangzeb.
Yeah. So Alamgir.
The same person. He's the one who he destroyed the idols, right?
He was a warrior too, and a scholar. SubhanAllah. So the whole point of this spiel is that I know we've gone over just the bones and the structure of the book. Traditionally, the way that a mother's student would have to study this book is that they would have every single word of the vocabulary from the beginning of the book till now memorized, and they wouldn't make more than 10% errors on those words. Like, you should be able to get a 90 on the vocabulary of the book alone. Why? Because we can learn all these rational rules. None of this means anything unless you have vocabulary to use it. That's like having a gas car with no gas. You paid $50K in an area that has no gas stations. You know?
Vocabulary doesn't stay if you don't speak it
Or if you don't read it, right? Reading is the equivalent to speaking, right? You might not have the same ability to recollect words as someone who's challenged in speech, but it definitely, retains. It causes things to be retained. Okay, so as of next week, inshallah, on next Friday, what we will be doing is we'll be going over a revision of all of the vocabulary from this book, particularly over the actual lines.
And on next Saturday, inshallah, we'll have a lengthy session, slightly longer than usual. We'll start at 8 o'clock and go until 11 on next Saturday, during which, inshallah, we'll be going over all 10 lessons in a nutshell. The week after, we'll be testing. We'll have a formal test for the whole book. And then, inshallah, God willing, the day afterwards, we'll be beginning with Lisan al-Quran.
You said Lisan al-Quran.
Yes.
What's the language?
The language of the Quran. Right. The tongue of the
What's
Quran.
the next subject or class?
Yeah,
you want to
it's
say?
going to be the next class. And it's a book that's similar to this. There's a
Oh, it's
bunch
another
of... Yeah, it's another book.
Awesome.
Yeah, similar. It's longer. It's very long. It has a lot of practical examples. And in Arabic 100, we'll be beginning, inshallah, at the same time, Qasas al-Nabi. And parts of the Medina Arabic book, inshallah, that I'll share. Any questions?
And then next quarter we're also starting at 11.
Yes. Understand. Unless you guys agree to come at 7 instead, and then we can end earlier. So just coordinate with them, please, if you don't. Inshallah. Alrighty, Jazakumullah khairan. Before we conclude, we have some exercises here. These exercises are primarily taken from the Quran, especially exercise number 2. Exercise number 1, if you're able to complete any of this before our next class, that's to your benefit. Otherwise, we will formally go over that on next Saturday, inshallah.
So
Alright.
when's our examination?